What's up, guys? Happy Friday. Happy end of the week. And happy 13 days left until the NFL draft. And the Steelers are going to add a quarterback to their room. They're also going to add another quarterback to their room. You might have heard at some point along the way. That, of course, being probably Aaron Rodgers. However, as we sit here less than 2 weeks now officially from the draft, it's hard to not wonder what would happen if he doesn't sign. If he just says, you know what, I changed my mind, or didn't change my mind necessarily. I'm just not going to play football. I'm really old. I'm done. That's it. Okay. Enough. If that were to happen, you have to try to piece together the rest of the puzzle here. And by that, I mean, let's start with this. What would the room's composition be? I have advocated repeatedly, tirelessly, that you go with Mason Rudolph and that you have with him not one, but two younger people so that you multiply your chances of finding the guy going forward, up to and including Mason. However, at the recent NFL annual meeting, when Omar Khan was asked whether or not he would want to get a veteran quarterback to fill out the room regardless, his response was, I'd say that's a safe assumption. Now, we have already seen that the Steelers have not followed through on things that they say. And I'm sure a lot of that is things that are out of their control. I'm not accusing them of lying or anything. So that doesn't mean that he'd have to stick with that. That doesn't mean that there's no chance for Rudolph to be the starter. But it does let you know out loud what it is that they're thinking. So if that is the way this plays out, there's got to be another veteran in the mix. Right? Okay, so who would that be? The free agency list is pretty much down to Carson Wentz in that category. I've got no interest in Wentz. I did a few years ago. I think a lot of people did. He looked like he had the world in front of him as far as really his potential and what he could be for a team. He looked like a franchise guy in Philadelphia, at least at certain points, I should say, in his career in Philadelphia. We've brought up a lot of times on this program Kirk Cousins. I've never been all that big on Cousins, but Cousins can do some things that other guys can't do. Cousins has had his moments in the NFL, most recently in Minnesota, not so much in Atlanta. You'd have to get him through a trade, but that's hardly unthinkable. The Falcons have committed the way they've committed. Why? I'm just going to keep saying this. Why? What is the urgency here? What is meaning the gotta have the old guy around? Is Rudolph not old enough? Has he not spent enough time in the National Football League? Like, what do you have to cross a certain line? Does it have to be 10 or 12 years? Why can't it just be 7 or 8? Not to mention, Rudolph's time has been spent in Pittsburgh. Like, you don't have to wonder what kind of impact he's going to have for you on the field, no matter what you think of him, whether it's good or bad or whatever. You don't have to wonder about him. You certainly don't have to wonder about him off the field. You don't have to worry about his character. You don't have to worry about what kind of a teammate he'd be, whether or not his teammates would like him. It's already there. Why? The constant fear. And that's what this is. Let's call it what it is. It's fear. Got to have the old guy around. Why? Because I had Ben Roethlisberger around for 18 years. This is in Mike Tomlin's symbolic head. Always had the old guy. Never had to worry about the room. Didn't want to worry about the room. Just wanted to worry about the defense. And it's just, the whole thing is so grossly misguided. When we come back, I'm going to be joined by Chris Halleck, and we're going to go over some of these options and whether or not within that, the Steelers couldn't just get two of those options in the draft itself.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
What you got, Chris? Give me a quarterback, an old guy, to satisfy this peculiar need that the Steelers have.
An old guy?
Yeah, give me an old guy.
Well, I mean, they got an old guy that they've been,
chasing. Yeah, other than him. Other than him. We don't even know that he wants to play. And we can't know it. I mean, they can all say, look at it. Yeah, we believe he's heading in our direction or something like that. Until he does it, you don't know. He can wake up one day, something hurts, and he goes, you know what? That's it. I'm through.
Yeah. Well, in terms of veterans, I mean, you really don't have much of a choice. Those choices have dwindled down. I do think you can call the Falcons about Kirk Cousins. And, I understand a lot of people are concerned about the contract, but remember the contract is not traded with the player. Like it's not the entirety of the contract. Signing bonus money is not traded. The retaining team pays that. They've really already paid it. It's just prorated throughout the life of the contract for cap purposes. So I think you could get Kirk Cousins, and I think that's probably in terms of obviously quality of NFL quarterback, body of work, everything is obviously a much better option than Mason at this stage of his career. I'd still probably call him a better quarterback, but there are question marks coming off of an Achilles injury. There always are. It's the same way with Rodgers too. I mean, Rodgers, when he first came back from the Achilles injury last year, it took him at least a half a season to really find any kind of footing. And it's probably the same for Kirk Cousins as well.
Yeah. I mean, here's another thing that's kind of related to this. Yesterday, Shedeur Sanders, son of Deion, quarterback of Colorado, was in town to visit on the South Side. And there were a couple of scenes you could see, pictures and stuff that he, landing at the airport, whatever, our airport. And as he's on his way back out, he did an interview with, I believe it was NFL Network. Or was it ESPN?
Kay Adams.
I'm not sure.
He did one. Kay Adams did one with NFL Network.
I have no idea what network that is. But anyway, he did an interview. And one of the things that he said in the interview was, actually, he was asked something like, would you be okay being behind Aaron Rodgers and whatever else here? You got to understand, if you're investing, let's just say it's a first-round pick in Sanders, okay? Because I think that's pretty much where it would have to be. He's not dropping to the third.
Oh, no.
Okay, all right. So let's say you're investing a first-round pick in Sanders. In this scenario that we've been talking about now for weeks, he's not 2. He's 3. Okay, you're not dropping Mason to 3rd. Okay, you did not make that arrangement at all in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so what you have here is anyway. What Sanders said was he'd have no problem being behind and Rodgers. The question actually could have been phrased much differently, like how would you feel about being 3? Okay, because that's when you start getting dad involved and everything else. Okay,
yeah.
And then. Is he really being taught anything? Is he being buried? Is he whatever? Okay. I look at this team and this quarterback room and ask myself, when you bring in one of these guys, whether it's a Rodgers or a Cousins or a Wentz or a whoever, and you pay them the gazillion dollars that they're still going to get, they're still going to get this money, even though you're bidding against yourself, which, by the way, is completely idiotic unto itself. Because you should say to him, to Rodgers, we're your only option. We're it. Here, take this money or don't. Don't say, out of respect, we should pay him $20 million. Why? Go get TJ done. Go get other stuff done. You don't have to do that. As I look at the as I look at that room, at that structure, it just doesn't make sense to me. And it looks like, yet again, what they would do is they would get the young guy or guys, ideally, bring them in and just bury them. Certainly for a year, bury them.
Well, I mean, is it burying? And because, like, like, for example, Sanders wouldn't be the first round quarterback to sit for at least a year.
Right. And I'm in favor of that. I just don't necessarily want it as a, that's not the, I just don't see this coach changing in that regard. I really don't.
Well, I mean, when Kenny Pickett was first drafted, he wasn't handed the reins. He had to earn it, and even then, like, even regardless of what happened throughout training camp, he didn't become the starter until Mitch Trubisky proved for 3.5 games that he just wasn't going to hack it. That they weren't going to do anything. Tomlin pulled the plug and put Kenny in, and then he rode with him. But I think we can all pretty unequivocally say that Aaron Rodgers won't play at the level Mitch Trubisky played at. So, Rodgers would be that guy, and whoever they would draft, whether it be somebody in the first round, whether it be somebody in the third round, fourth round, whoever it be, would have an opportunity to grow for a year, and if for whatever reason things don't work out with Rodgers, then that gives somebody like Sanders or whoever they draft a better opportunity to try to get some real playing time in their first season.
Cody says, what if Mason is the guy and you still keep him on the bench? We have no idea what he actually is at this point. The closest we've come to finding out in either direction went really, really well. We can all say, oh, look, he's only played X number of games. Whose fault is that? You think he put up his hand at the beginning of the season and said, I'll not play? That wasn't his choice.
Yeah.
He beat out Trubisky. We forget that.
No, he did. Yeah.
He beat out Trubisky in every way, shape, and form at that one camp in Latrobe. They went with Trubisky. Why? Preset. Go with the guy that you already had in your head.
Yeah, I mean,
I got to tell you, Chris, I'm sorry. When Mason started winning in 2023, and you watched Tomlin squirm, and that's the right word for it, squirm through those press conferences, both on Tuesdays and after the games, in trying to find a way to wriggle out of all the questions that were being asked, in essence of, did you not know you had this guy? Because that's how that went.
Yeah.
And it would all be something, he'd come back with something about the hot hand. Instead of just saying, hey, he's doing great. This is exciting for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're proud to have drafted him. We're proud that he worked as hard as he did. Instead, what you got was hot hand, or we'll see how it goes, or anything at all to avoid saying, wow, I really, really blew this, didn't I?
Well, I think also at the time, you had a first-round quarterback that you didn't know was going to request a trade in a few months. You had a first-round quarterback that you still kind of planned at that point to still be a guy that was hopefully going to be the future for you, because you didn't draft a guy in the first round, regardless of what you saw in 2 seasons, to turn into nothing. There were, again, even when they signed Russell Wilson, the whole idea was that was going to be competition, that he was brought in to compete with Kenny, and that Kenny was going to have to earn his way. And then Kenny's the one who decided, I don't want to do that. Trade me away. And so I think at that time, back whenever Tomlin was riding with Mason over Kenny, he didn't want to completely bury his first round quarterback.
David says, I'm not an expert on Kirk Cousins, but isn't his style at least more similar to Mason Rudolph's than he who shall not be named? We've named Aaron Rodgers already in this episode. He might make more sense and would be willing to come here because he'd actually play. Is Cousins more comparable to Rudolph in the sense that he has, he's a stand-in there quarterback, and that he's going to try to beat you if you blitz him, and other positive traits that Cousins has shown? Sure. But again, what are you doing? You're not bringing him in to find out what he's got. You're not bringing him in to find out if he can be the future of the franchise.
No.
And that's the part that keeps getting me here. If you're going to do this all the way. Stop pretending that quarterback is just another position on the field. Go after it. The owner of the team said it's the top priority. The owner of the team said he wanted to keep Justin Fields. You didn't. You didn't. He said that, not me. Rooney said, well, actually, I said it too, but I don't have a vote in this. Rooney wanted them to keep Fields. Rooney wanted them to build a room of like quarterbacks, other guys who were mobile, who could move, who were younger, and they didn't. So what happened when they didn't, Chris? They went, old guys, let's go find some old guys.
Well, unfortunately, old guys were all that were left at that point. You could have tried to sign Sam Darnold. I don't even know if Sam Darnold was even still available.
I can't remember. It was right around that timeline. I know what you're saying.
It all happened in the same day.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, Sam Darnold, I don't think it was ever a realistic possibility just because of what he was going to cost. But obviously, I think they looked at when this entire situation, even before free agency hit, and before they found out Justin Fields was going to go to the Jets, they had a certain mindset about all of their options, whether it was Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. I know he wasn't an actual option, but just naming them out. No, I know he wasn't, but I'm just naming them out. Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, all these guys. They didn't look at any of them as being a legitimate future option. Shaka Steele says Tomlin's being held hostage by Rodgers. I disagree because hostage implies that you're not willing to participate. He's absolutely willing to participate. If you are willingly participating in the negotiation or in waiting, you're not a hostage. But when you look at all the options, I think they looked at them and said, none of these guys are our future option. Like Justin Fields stands the best chance of turning into the future, which is why he was atop their priority list. But they obviously only saw a certain amount of money that was worth investing in that. And even then, for the Jets to sign him, they had to add 3 full years to that contract.
They did. Robert Sham says Mason throwing to Pat Fryermuth, DK Metcalf, and George Pickens. That sounds good. Spice Creations, who's not at all a Mason girl, says he's just isn't good. She says,
I think, I remember I did a chalk talk on DKPittsburghSports.com a while back. It was a few weeks ago now. And I came to the conclusion based off of everything. I watched every single one of his dropbacks in Tennessee when he had a much worse team around him. And I believe that he is a high floor quality backup that can start games for you, much like a Charlie Batch used to be able to for Ben Roethlisberger. Not calling him Charlie Batch because Charlie Batch was really, really one of the better backups of this millennium, pretty much. But you get the point.
Yeah. Cody says, how do you know that Mason isn't good? You don't. Well, I mean, there is something to be said for sample size. And anybody who wants to come in with arguments related to how he did in Nashville last season, you'd better start with what the Titans were like as a team overall, regardless who was at quarterback. They were very, very bad. Hodge says, funny how a 10-7 record is a train wreck. They're far from that, but they still can't be considered great yet. 3-14 would be a train wreck. Well, yeah, the Titans were a train wreck.
Yeah,
both sides of the ball in pretty much every capacity. Malvo says Mason isn't good. He's average. Would you take average over the quarterback play that you've gotten?
I would define Mason's quarterbacking, especially even of that 3 and 4 game sample size, as competent. He didn't do anything overly extraordinary. He dropped back. He made his reads. He made his throws. And a lot of the times it worked out because he was throwing to George Pickens, who's a really special receiver. He was throwing to Deontay Johnson, who could get open almost at will. He was throwing to Pat Fryermuth, who's a pretty good tight end. I mean, the running game was going at that point too. I mean, there were a lot of things going for that around him, so that competent quarterback play looked really, really good.
The scenario is not any different now, though. And part of what he did, and this stuff, the intangible stuff, almost always gets overblown. But in this case, the relationship that he established with George, the trust, these guys were pretty tight. And George himself will tell you that Mason brought a lot of stuff out of him. He was trusting him with different routes. He was trusting him with short passes. Remember? In that stretch, there was a lot of this, and this to get George more involved, to get his hands on the ball. And then George would, to his credit, entirely to his credit, take off and run from there. That was a side of him that we hadn't seen before that, because they all thought, maybe that he was a one-trick pony or whatever. Yeah. DV says, I think Mason's ceiling is doing Blake Bortles and winning a few playoff games unexpectedly. I'd take that in a gap year. I mean, Blake Bortles. I mean, we're going to disintegrate here. Spice says Mason threw a lot of interceptions. Yeah, he did. How many of those were tipped by his own receivers up into the air, Chris?
3.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can say things based on some numbers. We can all embrace any statistics that we want to make any argument that we want, pretty much. The PEF comes in appropriately enough on a Friday and says, at the end of the day, is there anything the Steelers can do to make you believe that they can win a Super Bowl this season? We need a lot of bounces to go our way. I think the PEF is being generous with a lot of bounces. You're not going to bounce your way into the Super Bowl. You're not going to luck your way into that. You're not going to luck your way into the championship games. You've got to have a lot of stuff that I think that the Steelers don't have, which to me, again, how do I do this without bringing up Rudolph? Because I know that's all anybody thinks that I'm focused on here, and it's not. I think you need to have, Chris, for the Steelers to succeed, a symbiosis between offense and defense. I think you need to have, here's that time of possession offense that moves the ball, that attacks downfield when it needs to, that handles play action, that more than anything, though, is still founded off the big, bad running game. Okay? If you do that and you get 35 minutes, okay? You get 35 minutes off the clock. Your defense is out there for 25. Your defense gets that much better. And your defense already can be pretty good. Your defense now goes from a top 10 defense to a top 5. Just throwing that out there. Don't bite my head off. Okay? If you do that, now you have something that other teams kind of have a tough time dealing with week after week after week. It's a lot more like Philadelphia, let's put it that way, than it is Kansas City or Buffalo. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I think, and to be fair, I think the Steelers want to be more like Philadelphia than they want to be like Kansas City or Buffalo. I think, obviously, and any franchise would do this. If you have the opportunity to get a franchise quarterback, then you do it. If you have the opportunity to go get a Patrick Mahomes, you go do it. You have the opportunity to get Josh Allen, you go do it. But at the same time, I think in terms of the culture, the way that they want to play, the overall philosophy, they do want to be more like Philadelphia, given the emphasis there is on defensive tackle in this draft, not just because of the strength of position, but also watching what Philadelphia did to Kansas City in the Super Bowl, the way that they played. But either way, no matter what, you have to have better quarterback play. You have to have a future at quarterback. And you could try to get that this year. And I've said, and I know that Matt Williamson and I on the Southside Beat yesterday talked about it, the home run swing in this draft is Jalen Milroe. You want to try to get the guy that's going to be able to put on the cape possibly eventually and be Superman for you. Jalen Milroe's your guy. It's also a gigantic gamble because he may not ever realize that ceiling. He also could kind of find a middle ground and turn into a Jalen Hurts type. And if the rest of your roster is built the same way that the Eagles have built, hey, shoot, they had Jalen Hurts at quarterback and they just won a Super Bowl because Hurts is more than a competent quarterback and occasionally make a really nice play. And they also had a phenomenal running game and dominating defense. And so that's the way the Steelers want to play.
Here's one for Chris that you're free to read yourself.
Oh, geez. Chris, what are your thoughts on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt? I think he could be the steal of the draft. Honestly, I have not done homework.
I've never even heard the name in my life.
Sorry.
Notice I sent it to you though.
One of the guys they even brought in for a visit today. I have not done homework. It was the defensive tackle from SMU. Did not do my homework on that guy. There are a lot of guys I'm doing homework on, and I can't unfortunately get to all 300 something players that are eligible for the draft.
Trevante Towson says, "Hey DK, with granted no real changes to the coaching positions having happened, whom would you give a call for a job? Now, tomorrow, the day after, the week after, the year after, I'm calling Mike Munchak. And I'm saying, Munch, dude, listen, we're sorry. Whatever it was that happened, we're sorry. Please come back to us. Please coach the offensive lineman. We've put so much capital, so much money, draft picks, trades to move up in the draft for these guys. Please come in and teach them how to offensive line. Do that. Okay? Please, Munch, come home." How did I do there, Trevante? Did I do all right? That's all I want out of all of this. Frank Rice is finger wagging everybody. 97 likes. He says 502 watching. It's more than that because we're on multiple platforms here. We have 97 likes so far. It's not all that great. Steelers Love says Munchak was the only answer to that question. That is accurate. You notice I put a lot of thought into it too. It was just like, here's exactly what it is. Clay says Mason has remained a true professional through all this. I genuinely don't know what else he has to do to earn a legitimate shot. After that 2023 showing, Clay comes in with a $5 contribution. I reported in today's Friday Insider feature on our site, DK Pittsburgh Sports, that Mason's in a good spot. He's not doing interviews right now because the team would rather that he hangs on until the picture is clear, which makes sense. You don't want, if he was to be brought out right now to the media room on the South Side, everyone would be, Aaron Rodgers this, Aaron Rodgers that, Aaron Rodgers this. What would you feel about this? Do you want to be the starter? And it's not going to do anybody any good, least of all him. He's going to say something that might be moot by the very next day. So they want to see how the rest of this goes. He'll talk, but he's in a good place. I can tell you that. And yes, he has been a true professional. Wise Polecat says, do you guys think Sidney Crosby would be willing to play quarterback for the Steelers? Looked good throwing a football the other night. And he's old. That's good. I like that. He hits all the criteria, right?
I can personally attest to this because I covered Penguins practice yesterday. Crosby has absolutely heard about the jokes that are going on about can Crosby play quarterback for the Steelers, and he just kind of laughed.
Well, it's not just that though, but he also hit a home run in a real live BP session with a pitcher behind an L screen at PNC Park. He hit it out of the stadium.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, that was a few years ago, but you can't convince me that if you sent Sid over there tomorrow, he wouldn't do the same thing. Yeah. He is. There's only one Sid. You know, the best reaction that anybody had to Sid throwing that football into the ring the other night at the Pat McAfee event, which Ben Roethlisberger did too. But Ben, I mean, okay. I mean, that was just an out route for Ben. That was nothing, right? Sid does it, and then there's Chris Letang standing there, just going, "Yep," because Letang called it beforehand. Mm-hmm. He's going to do this, I mean, he's Sid. We all know he's going to do this. Then they asked Gino, Evgeny Malkin. They asked him, did you think Sid was going to do this? Yes, that's his whole answer. Of course, everybody loved it because he's Gino. Pete Noriega Rooney comes in with a $5 contribution of his own and says, Dion is going to force Shedeur into Pittsburgh. No idea what that means. If you listen to that Yahoo interview he did the other day, no. It sounds like he is about to pull Archie. Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about now. Meaning when Archie Manning, that, you would tell teams, please don't take my kid. He's not going to come to play for you, and you try to orchestrate. But that also tells you what kind of a headache the Sanders thing is going to be from now till the end of time, because Dion's not going to let him alone. He's just not. This is an I was about to say overbearing, which is probably true, but overwhelming personality. The scope of the Dejan personality.
I understand I understand the concern over it, and I'm not discrediting it or you're just dismissing it at all. But I do think it is a little overblown. I do, because at the end of the day, Deion Sanders was still a head coach of a Big 12 school for multiple seasons, and they still had to win football games in a Power 4 conference. And Shedeur still played at a high level. Like he's a
real live player.
Yeah, when you're a head coach, you can't babysit one player. Doesn't matter if he's your son or not. You don't have time to babysit one player when you're coaching an entire program. So I don't, and he's not going to stop coaching. It's not like if Sanders wherever Sanders gets drafted, that Deion's just going to retire from being the Colorado head coach and go take a job on that coach's staff and continue to hold his hand. He's got a job to do still. So I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal.
Hodge says Sanders will look much better in New Orleans. I guess. Bryce says the Dejon stuff's overblown. As Chris just said, Lifted Ones wants to know what you think of Elijah Badger, the wide receiver out of Florida.
Again, I another guy I really haven't done a lot of homework on. The receivers in this draft have not been there have been a few that have really, really intrigued me, but the further you get down the list, it's not that great of a receiver class. It's just not. There's not one guy who's coming into this class in particular who is just an outright star, like a star waiting to happen. I'm not saying one can't turn into one. I mean, my player comp for Matthew Golden was Santonio Holmes. If he turned into that, then that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. But will Santonio Holmes ever, like a top 10 receiver in the NFL? I don't think so. But he turned into a really, really good receiver that rightfully won a Super Bowl MVP.
Todd, he says, Munch is retired. No, you're retired and then you're not, and then you look at Baltimore, and there's Dean Pease, who'd been totally retired, 75 years old. Middle of the season, the Ravens panic because they can't prevent the pass.
Yeah.
And who do they call?
Yeah.
I mean, you're retired and then you're retired. In football, you can change your designation with a snap of a finger. But if you're asking if he's attached to a team right now, and maybe that is what you're asking, the answer to that is no. Denny says, make Munch the assistant head coach. Give him Tomlin's house. Wow.
Jeez. Whoa.
That's jeez. I would, if I was the Steelers, I would do a lot to ensure that I'm getting maximum performance from that specific group. That's the part that, if you think about this and the way you're building this offense, the Arthur Smith offense, and just Smith's style, and you have all these other pieces in place, and you have the multiple tight ends, and you have, Mount Washington and the really tall tight end that they just brought in, whose name is slipping my mind at the moment, that they brought in this offseason that now gives them three
Parham.
of those guys.
Yeah, Parham.
Yeah. That's not something that you want to waste because you can't coach up your O-line.
Yeah.
Chris says Munch is from my town, Scranton. He's in Denver with his family. He is. I mean, call him. Tell him, Munch, hey, we love you. Come home.
I also know that there was no chance of Pat Meyer probably getting, because, again, the Steelers just don't let go of coaches that are under contract. It's got to be this is about. It's if they're under contract, they don't get let go. I mean, there have been very rare exceptions to that. Obviously when Canada was fired mid-season, but even then, he wasn't fired before that season. Why wasn't he fired? Because he was still under contract. That's why he wasn't fired. And then when it's mid-season, you can fire him because who you're going to replace him with isn't going to be an outside hire. You can replace him with guys who are on your staff. So you're not having to pay extra people. So
we're gonna close today with a good question here from Jacob, who says, "This is Chris. Who are some young guys deeper in this draft that you're looking forward to who might be available for the Steelers?"
Well, deeper. I mean, I even go into the like today, for example, they brought in DJ Giddens, running back out of Kansas State. He's more probably of a third round option. That's not deep in the draft. That's more mid round, but I really like him a lot. If they don't get like a Marion Hampton in the first round, I think Giddens is a really good option in the third round. Big body type that has phenomenal patience and has the one cut ability. And then Steeler fan 1933 says Munch has been an offensive consultant for the Rams the last 2 years. And then some other guys. I mean, Kyle Williams is shooting up draft boards, receiver from Washington State. I like RJ Mickens, the safety from Clemson. He's a little bit later.
I wouldn't be surprised in general if the Steelers focus that area of the draft on running backs, where you don't go too high with the picks. You don't necessarily need to be a 1 and a 3 where you just say, here, we're going to get. Now, the downside of that is you could end up, fourth rounder. That was Anthony McFarland's round.
Yeah.
Okay. On the other hand, Jalen Warren wasn't drafted at all. DV says, do you think Andy Weidel has a big say in Meyer's eventual replacement? Here's what I say. If you think he's going to be eventually replaced, then you no longer trust him. I'm not saying they do or they don't, okay? I don't hear bad things, by the way.
No.
And I don't mean to make it sound like I don't hear bad things about Meyer. We've heard bad things in the past beforehand about offensive line coaches. I haven't heard that about him. But what's happening on the field is not some sort of inside the industry secret. You can just look at it and see that Broderick Jones regressed. That has to change. All right, one more from Sasha Steele, who says, is there a main reason for players getting a top 30 visit invitation from the Steelers? Those players are all over the board. This term needs to die a gory death.
It really does. It
doesn't even make sense. What does that even mean, top 30? They're not top anything. Lay this one out, Chris. It's you're allotted 30 visits. There's nothing about a top anything in this. No. It's not a ranking. It's not you're plucking from a top 30 list. Where did it even come from? It makes no sense.
No idea. It is just something that started. And the thing that's really not.
This isn't the question that was asked anyway.
It's not. But the thing that's really made it worse is the fact that beat writers, like people who cover the team on a regular basis, have started to use the phrase. And that's the part that drives me insane even more than anything, because you're here. Oh, the reporter's saying it. So that must mean what it's. I remember last year, and I'm not going to say who the reporter is because I'm not like that. But I remember one reporter in particular asked, like during the pre-draft press conference, when you brought this guy in for a top 30 visit, it just sounds weird coming out of my mouth. When you brought this guy in, like Tomlin just sat there, was like, a what? Like you brought him in for a pre-draft visit.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, okay. Then he started
pre-draft. But even Mike Tomlin had never heard the term top 30 because it doesn't even exist. What was Sasha's actual question?
We need to go back and actually answer the question.
This is what it went and asked, which is, what's the main reason for bringing those people in person? What's the main reason for doing that?
You're going to be trying to find out whatever answers you didn't already get. For example, if you've already met with a player, like at the combine in a formal meeting or informal meeting, or if you met with them at the pro day and you still need answers to something, or you have a medical concern, that's what you bring them in for. You bring them in to find out any answers you possibly need. If it's X's and O's, you can have football conversations with them. If there is a history of knee issues, then you can have medicals done and you can reassure yourself of whether this guy is, okay to draft, or he's just like, okay, we got to take him off our board. We're not taking him. Whatever needs to be answered, that's what you bring them in for.
Holiday gets the final word today and says, we have to stop talking about what the Steelers traditionally do. They are not those Steelers anymore. That is a fair stance for anyone to hold. Chris, have yourself a good weekend. We will do this again on Monday. Do you like that one? The ending? I'm getting better at those. Chris, have yourself a good weekend. We'll do this again Monday. It sounded good. And I looked over there, and the boss is nodding, going, finally got that one down, huh? We're going to have a membership count here in a moment as to where we are. Our goal is to have 3,000 members by the start of training camp.
It's ticking at the bottom.
She says it's ticking. Oh, she put it on the ticker. That's so small. But it's down. Oh, that's not small. That is big. 1,861 memberships is where we are. We're getting closer to 2,000, and thus, mathematically, we necessarily are getting closer to 3,000. Our friend Pete came in with not one, but two questions attached to $5 contributions. Stella came in saying that I was taking a Turner's tea break. I actually, at the moment, I'm with the Starbucks. Neither of them is a sponsor, by the way. I just want to throw that out there. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, by the way, we don't have one. If you have a business and you want to do that, feel free to reach out. My email address here, I'll type it on the screen for you, because that's what we do at this part of the show, is just random stuff like that. Type my email address so you can have it there and take a look. Maybe screen grab it for yourself. It's DK at DKPittsburghSports.com. If you're interested in being title sponsor of this, we'll have that conversation as well. It's not something, as you know, that we've pushed, but we're certainly open to it. Who else came in? The barber came in with 5. John came in with 5. These are gift memberships. Carrie with the standard 1. I have no idea how to pronounce that, but that individual became a YouTube member today of this channel. Clay gets a double whammy here. He praises Mason Rudolph, which is a great way to get your question on. 2, he comes with a contribution, which is another great way to get your question on here. Bud gifted 1. Golden Buck had something really nice to say, and I didn't get that on until now. How did I miss that one? I appreciate that. Gino comes in with 1. I mentioned that Stella had 10, and then came in with another 20 in the gift category. Antonio gifted 1. Ernest gifted 1. This is all Barber here. He can't fool us. We know all of Barber's various aliases. And, man, we appreciate everybody. That's what I want to say here. We're growing this thing. We're building this thing. And you know what else? We're getting closer to the NFL draft, which I think is going to bring another big bump for us. When we get there, and I haven't exactly figured out what we're going to do, but we're going to have some members-only content for the first time. And I don't know if that's going to be a live chat. It's going to be a live video. We were talking last night about maybe getting Matt Williamson involved in this on some broader scale. We'll see how that comes about. But what we don't want to have happen is we get to that week, because you can see the video, like it shows up on your screen on your display, but you can't access it. And I think that's going to really frustrate people. So we'd rather not, get all kinds of complaints and everything else. What happened to you? You didn't tell us about this. We're telling you in advance. DKPS.net/join is the place to go. Type that into your web address. It's 99 cents a month. And you're going to get all kinds of stuff for it. You're going to have to take my word for that at the moment, but you'll see. So appreciate everybody. Appreciate Chris. Appreciate that we're getting that much closer to a really big actual football event that hopefully doesn't involve talking about Aaron Rodgers. See how I did that? Said his name. See you guys on Monday.